I need to talk about Skate, and more specifically, the upcoming release of Skate 4, but just known as Skate. And it comes from a place of love and concern because this is a game that's been in development for so long now. And, you know, thinking back, it was one of the most anticipated games can ever really remember. I think, you know, recently Hollow Knight Silk Song being, you know, this cult game which now is finally getting its release in a week or two. Skate 4 is exactly the same, and you look back to all of those streams of the Game Awards, Summer Games Fest, every year in Twitch chat, YouTube chat, people would be spamming Skate 4, Skate 4, Skate 4. And when we finally got that announcement, that sort of cathartic release of this game finally happening, there was that initial wave of excitement and hype, which died down as the developers just said, we're going to lock in, you know, put hoods up and just work hard for you guys. And we've since then seen some gameplay reveals and teasers here and there of the development in progress. And I myself have been lucky enough to play some of the insider programs even a couple of years ago. And I obviously I can't speak on that due to embargoes and NDAs and stuff. But I can speak on my cautious optimism for the game going forward and in the future, because when we heard that it was a free-to-play release, I'm sure, like me, you were probably a little bit apprehensive, because we sit in an era now in 2025 of gaming where there seems to be this big obsession with live service products, and that's been, you know, volatile to say the least. I mean, there's been no shortage of successes for sure with stuff like Helldivers 2, which was a phenomenal sequel and a great build off of the first one, and an unexpected success in many ways. But equally, you can point the other finger and look at Concord, which was a $400 million disaster. And I think even just as a consumer, right, looking at it from a consumer perspective, there's, you know, not a lot of interest, at least in my eyes anymore, for these, you know, live service games, which are often free to play, which are bloated with microtransactions. You know, we're so long past this era of a time where you'd get the game, you pay, what, $40 to $60 or pounds for it, and you can earn everything in the game just through a bit of time and effort. And it's there. That's where the progression comes. Now in this era of free to play where, you know, yes, it's free, and that's the caveat, right? But there's no sense of progression. You just get the core gameplay loop, really. And the only way to unlock cosmetics and all the cool items is to cough up a hell of a lot of money, which usually costs more than $20 or $40 to $60 in the end anyway. And that's never a business model I've been a fan of. And I feel exactly the same about Skate 4 going ahead, which is such a disappointment, because I have so many great memories with this incredible franchise. You know, looking back to Skate 1, it was one of the games I played the most as a kid back on my 360. You know, it catered towards skater culture, you know, and it was a niche product in many ways. And just like, as I mentioned earlier with Helldivers 2, an unexpected success, I think. But it was, for me, a great time. It was simple in many ways. Like, you couldn't even get off your board in Skate 1. It was that simple. It was stripped back simple, but the core gameplay loop was phenomenal. And I think that's what makes a game, you know, that should be the core of every game, is tight gameplay. Whether you're talking about a mobile game or a AAA release, I think that's the core tenet. Everyone should prioritize first is a good core gameplay loop. Skate 1 had that in absolute spades, and it was an incredible time. And of course, because of its success, financially and critically, they were happy to do a sequel with Skate 2, which was everything we really wanted from a sequel. It was bigger, better in pretty much every way, and of course, you could get off your board, which was revolutionary at the time. It sounds stupid, it sounds simple, because, you know, now we take it for granted with Skate 3 and beyond. But, you know, at the time, that was great because you could go to different parts of the map and then pick your spots. And it became, in a lot of ways, this is a weird comparison, but something to like Breath of the Wild, where it's about discovery and finding these cool areas and cool spots within the context of Skate to you know, find cool lines to show your friends and share with the community. That was such a great part of what made Skate 2 and beyond incredible. And I was a big fan of that, of course. And then when Skate 3 released, I believe in 2010, someone might correct me if I'm wrong there, this was, in my opinion, I think a great step for the franchise. Some people would disagree and see it as a real double-edged sword, which I think with some nuanced viewing, I think is a fair point in a lot of ways, because Skate 3 was the first one out of the series to really depart, I think, in a lot of ways from the skater culture, which made the series, you know, so popular and a cult classic. still had it embedded within for sure, in terms of branding, skaters, of course, and just general vibe, but much to a lesser degree than 1 or 2. And it focused more on the arcadey approach. And the sort of fallout of that was the idea of, you know, I think it was with the intention of expanding to a wider audience, and it absolutely worked, because Skate 3 is by far and away the most critically, I'm not sure critically, but definitely commercially successful one of the series. And it was the first time where the series went truly mainstream, because the gameplay was already incredible. That was never the problem, but they made it more accessible, more fun, expanded upon it, and made the overall vibe much more approachable, so that if you weren't into skater culture and you weren't really invested in the series beforehand, you could jump in and have a good time. And that's part of the reason why Skate 3, even now, still has such a healthy player base, you know, 15 years on, is because, and that's why people were talking about wanting a Skate 4 for so long in Twitch chat every year when, you know, the game release cycle would come around, was because the core gameplay loop was so solid and the game was just so accessible. The graphics were dated over time, but that didn't really matter, because it was damn fun to play. It was buggy, but the developers and the community kind of embraced that, you know, with all the launch glitches you could do and incredible stunts people were building off from that. There was so much to like about Skate 3. But equally, I think when I talk about the double-edged sword point of view, I think that's fair, because the knock-on effect to now with Skate 4 is they've gone even further in that direction of accessibility. And I don't mean that in terms of the free-to-play nature, where people don't have to pay an entry fee to join and play the game. I mean in the sense of the aesthetic, vibe, total shift, because in terms of Skate 4's general aesthetic, I wish I could show footage on my green screen panel here of it, because the embargo is not free as of the time of this recording. But the graphics have completely changed now from the original series into a much more arcadey and sort of animated style. It's not a realistic look, which I think is a big departure, and it's one not a lot of people are gonna like. I don't love it. I'm indifferent, really. It's not my biggest priority. At the end of the day, as I mentioned earlier, I think gameplay is paramount, and by all accounts, the gameplay in Skate 4 looks to be, allegedly, pretty damn good and smooth, and that's what matters the most. I just worry about, in terms of progression, the idea of a free-to-play philosophy, locking everything behind a store and a paywall. You know, in a lot of ways, as culturally relevant as it is, I kind of blame games like Fortnite for really popularizing stuff like this, with battle passes and item stores and shops that rotate exclusive items that you can only get for a day or two. And, you know, a lot of these things you can't earn in the game. And this is why a game like Helldivers 2, and I'm mentioning it again because it's incredible, but is a good example and a return to old of, you know, games like Halo Reach is one I remember as a kid, where you can just play the game, grind hard, and earn the stuff in the game for fun. And that feels like a sense of accomplishment, and I'm using it in the right way, not the way that EA did, talking about Star Wars Battlefront 2 with loot boxes and stuff. Because, you know, the items in that game, in Halo Reach and stuff, were fairly earned. It wasn't a hard grind per se. You just had to play the game and enjoy yourself. I don't think we're going to get that option as much in Skate, because at the end of the day, they're trying to make a lot of money, and I think they will with their monetization system, and that's why it's so popular now. And it's right, and it's okay to have concerns about that. I just hope that behind all of that, we have a fun game where progression is fair, it is allowed, and it is realistic without having to pay much of anything at all. I would love to hear your thoughts on Skate, the franchise, of anything, because I have so many good memories with it. I really hope you do too. And if that is the case, please share them in the comments below. This is a haven to talk about the games that I love, that you love as well. And I always want this to be a positive space. My Elden Ring video, or my Souls video, should I say, that went last live on the channel, was doing very well. And there's been a lot of sort of volatile discussion on it. I'd rather keep things somewhat chill, but I can't stop the internet. You know how it goes. Thank you so much for watching, listening. Like and subscribe if you do want more of this laid back, stripped, raw, unfiltered, uncut content. Thank you so much again, and I will see you on the next one. Have a good one.